Everybody on the show always gets a gift, and usually it's a bag of Vigilance Elite gummy bears from my company. But for you, I wanted to give you this rosary.
Oh.
And so I want to tell you about that rosary. When I found my faith, I got public about it, and a good friend of mine, his name's Dom Razzo, we were together at SEAL Team 2, and then he went on to development group SEAL Team 6. And when he saw that I'd come out and announced my faith, he sent me that rosary to give me protection, and I've carried it with me every day since.
My goodness.
With the stuff that you're about to uncover with this new film, Sounds of Freedom, I think maybe you're gonna need some of that protection. So it's my honor to pass that on to you.
Thank you very much.
There are rumors out that you and Mel Gibson are going to come together to expose some of the stuff that's going on in Hollywood.
There's a sound that you hear from these little ones that is so horrific that you will never forget it. And for 2 years, I could never forget it. I had a friend of mine that came to my house, and in the morning she's weeping, and she came over, and I said, "What's wrong?" "You were bawling." Really? What was I doing? So I had been sleeping, and I go to this dark place. My body had to process this out in my dreams. I had to pray deeply, but it motivated me to want to get these sons of bitches. And this is where I say it's the only unforgivable sin. I saw this movie a long time ago called Silent Scream. They were saying the baby in the womb screams when they tear it apart, they pull it out. That was hard to watch. And from that point on, I was always pro-life after seeing that. They send them to places like that all over the world. These biolabs.
What do they do with them in the biolabs when
I
they
think
receive them?
either making the adrenochrome and also for making agents to, kill people with it. So, if I'm a half Irish, half Swiss, they can get my DNA code and create a cocktail and put it off in an airplane, and I'm the only one that dies of a heart attack in the plane. And then you watch a James Bond movie, you go, boy, that's really weird.
Wow.
It suggested to me that this is probably why this world cabal is involved in all of this stuff, and it has a lot to do with the blood of our children. The public is now awakening to the trafficking, but eventually leads you to other places like Epstein Island. There are sins that are unforgivable, and Jesus talks about those too. That's the rejection of the Holy Spirit, and that is a lot what is with this whole thing with the children. Many of them will never ever get a chance, because when a lot of these pedophiles, and when they do these sins, God is telling them, do you understand? This is it. And they do it anyway. Let the dead bury their dead at that. Every film has something in it that a power. And then you go, okay, what's necessary, what's not necessary? That does not mean that I will not play the devil in a movie. But the difference is I don't go to the devil to ask him how to play him. I go to God to teach me how to play this. Because when I do, it should unearth you. There was a film I did with Denzel Washington, Deja Vu, and that had a lot to do with it. And so I got to write my monologue and piece in there with Denzel. Along the way, I've always got to work with really good agents, ATF, FBI, CIA, and I write notes down. And then I bring that back into the script and the interrogations that I got to see. You always hear another voice coming out of these guys, like the devil speaking right through them. When an individual watches the movie, time suspends itself. If the actors play it right, you're so entranced into the film that time just goes by like. When I was 16 years old and they were talking smack about my God, that ain't gonna happen around me. I said, I'm gonna go down and I'm gonna kill this son of a bitch, Goliath. After I kill him, you're gonna come around and take him out. But David what was profound, it was like, nobody talks about my father this way. Nobody. He loved him that much. Can you imagine? Our good God, he's not loved enough by us. He will gladly send his armies to protect us, but we don't love him enough. We have to be above the status quo of this modern day Christianity. This prosperity gospel is shit. The Bible wants you to have beautiful things, man. That's fine if you can hand it all back. I love beautiful things, I love Lamborghini and all that, but hey, listen, if I have to give it back, fine, done. It's over. Faith without your works is dead. 1 James. So many people say, but they don't do. The clouds it felt like I could jump up and touch them. And that was very mystical what was happening in the ground. You could feel something in the ground. The wind was blowing. I could see everybody. There were about 350 people that were around me on a hill. I couldn't hear the wind, and I could feel the suctioning. It was probably more like 3 seconds. It felt like 5, but it was probably less than that. And then boom, it shot me out of my body. I saw the back side, not here. And then Jan Michelini runs over, and I remember looking at him, and all of a sudden I saw his hand blow up. Sparks came out. There was another shot that came down. I died on the operating table. I've never told that. The reason why I brought that up is I felt incredible peace and love.
We talked a little bit about spiritual warfare before
Yes.
we started recording. With my new faith, I think it's my mission to spread the word. It's already connecting me to people that I never would have been connected with before, like yourself, a couple other people that are coming on the show soon. Everybody that's around me that is a believer, that's close to me, has come to me and told me, be careful, you need to watch out. Eli Crane told me there are no free shots on target when you're talking about spiritual warfare, and that evil will start to try to seep into my life the louder I get about this. I just found faith a couple months ago. I grew up a Catholic. When I joined the SEAL teams, and some of the things that I saw just destroyed my faith for the better part of 20 years.
That you saw in the SEAL teams, or that you saw in your faith?
In the SEAL teams. And that just carried on until literally a couple months ago. I had a pretty profound incident. The way I describe it is, everywhere I looked, I hated what I saw, and I started vocalizing it, which is everything. It was the stuff that I'm seeing happening to children, the pedophilia, the surgeries, the puberty blockers, the abortions, all of it. I hit a point, there was a day where God showed up. Instead of everywhere I looked, what I saw, what I hated, everywhere I looked, he was right there talking to me.
Jesus says the kingdom of heaven, it's like a pearl. He would sell everything, do anything to attain this. That's what he did. He went down to Colombia, sold his house to get the money, what he had out. He was 10 days of getting his pension, and he goes down to Colombia to find this little girl.
That's what Tim did?
Yeah, that's what he did.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's taken, the film, but with a huge heart.
Let's talk about some facts that go into sex trafficking. It's considered a modern form of slavery. The United States is the #1 consumer and producer of child abuse content. The Department of Homeland Security estimates that child trafficking has an annual global profit of $150 billion. Human trafficking has already passed the illegal arms trade and is going to pass the drug trade. About 2 million children are trafficked every year worldwide.
That's just the
Facts.
beginning of it all. I've talked to Tim about the numbers from other guys, and then gone over to Tim and goes, yeah, those are good numbers and everything, but it's bigger than that because there's other forms of the business.
This is just what we know.
Yes, on that part. I mean, we've been talking about 6 million. 2 million at least are also involved in the organ harvesting and all the other shit. Do you know this prayer? Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all these wicked spirits that move throughout the world. These entities will pay a high price when they dare get near God's children. And you're God's child. See, every time they do that, they risk being tossed into the furnace forever. And so this is their job. They serve underneath this wicked beast, and he's a beast. Passion of the Christ is very brutal, especially when we went to the Cat of Nine Tails. So when we were looking at like the Shroud of Turin is an image of Jesus. When you start going into the track lines on his body, you can see the bamboo sticks the Romans would have used on him. But then you all see the deep ones where it looks like the Grand Canyon in your skin, and they, like Keith Vanderland saying, people will go into shock now when they see this. He said, I'll take him to the edge. But in that particular case, that violence was important because that violence is our sin. I don't like particularly drinking piss and vinegar, but if I have to, I will, especially when the outcome is saving souls. And I go back to myself when I didn't feel like anybody did. And God said he did. And so I want to love him and bring as many souls as I could to him. So it was always in my intention in that film that when people see it, that they do not see me. They only see Jesus.
It's not one of the most realistic film I've ever watched.
If you watched It's a Wonderful Life, that film was very profound in its time and very hard to watch. And during Christmas, the most beautiful time of year, but you don't want to drop an F-bomb in that movie because this guy wants to end his life. It's over. He doesn't see what his value in his life, and this angel comes to him and shows him, George, don't you understand? If you weren't around these people, they would never made it without you. We have to look at our lives like that. One of the most profound scenes in that movie was when Jimmy Stewart, the Capra, had that camera on him. He says, God, if you're out there, please help. And those were real tears. That man flew 26 missions in a Liberator over Germany, World War II. And you understand that when you're flying over in that tight formation and one of those planes goes out, everybody has to remain quiet on their comms. Stewart lived with PTSD his entire life, and especially in that scene. And I'm sure that trauma played out there, but God used it in the most beautiful way. Do you know, more Christians, these modern day Christians, are more afraid of the devil than they are of God. Let me explain. God could kill the devil without a glance. The devil has no chance against God. This isn't it, God here and the devil here, Jesus here and the devil here. It's this. It's more like, here's a creature, devil, here's a creature, human. 365 times, one time every day in the Bible says, do not be afraid.
There's a reoccurring theme here, and it's overcoming fear.
You owe us your money. No, you don't. You don't put that and don't manipulate them. And that's another thing that is not Christianity, is that crap. Is, like we're one of the club. I don't use that thing that I'm saved. I look at what Apostle Paul said, when you contemplate your salvation, do it in fear and trembling. That's how I look at it. And finish the race. My race isn't done. I've got a lot more to go, but I don't like that manipulation stuff. And Jesus is not a manipulator, and that is not Christianity at all. It needs to be authentic. Jesus is authentic. There's a place in the Bible, John the Baptist, when he cried out, here's a guy that lived on locusts and honey and had, nothing. He lived on every breath from God. His own father, Zechariah, doubted God. So I imagine that when he was born, he had to go out and find another father, the real father. And at some point, God taught him everything. And once he understood it, he was like probably 2-3 people showed up. It was like a needle in a haystack. They found it. Jesus often mentions these Pharisees like to admire their own phylacteries. They sat at the highest places. Eventually, they had no more audience. See, they were out with John the Baptist. And he called them out. He says, you brood of vipers, you den of thieves, what you've done to the people. He said, do you think because you're a Jew, you're getting into heaven? God could turn these stones into Jews. Can I say something to your audience?
Absolutely.
Itahivu tinaletina, kokavel tiana afeflukom, antun itahivu lukom. My commandment to you is this: you love one another as I have loved you. So you love one another. God love you.
How did you get word about that film?
I knew Mel Gibson was, but I did not know it was Steve McAvity. That was his key producer. They invited me to a film. I think it was Tom Hanks and Mel Gibson were going to do this together. It was on Mavericks. We were talking about the movie. I didn't think the script was there yet. And then all of a sudden, Mel pivot to something. And I said, oh my God. And I said, you want me to play Jesus, don't you? And he looked at me. He was smoking a cigarette. And he just, yeah, put his head down. 2 days later, he called me and he goes, hey, Jim, it's Mel. I said, Mel who? He goes, I don't know, Mel Brooks. Hey, he was smoking a cigarette and he goes, do you still want to play this Jesus guy? If you do, you may never work in this town again. We're all called to carry our cross. If you don't pick up and carry your cross, you will be crushed by the weight of it. He got really quiet on the phone. I said, I just realized my initials are JC and I'm 33 years old. And he goes, God, you're freaking me out. He hung up the phone. When we were doing the Passion of the Christ, the pain that I had to go through was so incredible. I was hypothermic. My makeup times were from 2 in the morning till 10, and from 10:30 to 4:30, I was freezing. I had to learn the Aramaic, the Hebrew, and the Latin, and so I only get 3 hours of sleep. They created a cross with a bicycle seat in the middle, and then I'd hold my hand here and they would tie it. I'd just fall asleep sitting on this little bicycle seat. The cold would hit again, and then eventually I got a pneumonia. One particular take, I had dislocated my shoulder, and I bit through my tongue, and it's the part where Mary comes over. Before that, I said, God, I don't want them to see me. I only want them to see you. When you see me turn on this particular take, there's a stream of blood that is coming out of my mouth. I turn to Mary and I say, Eloi, Ami, Chodah Chadesh, behold, Mother, I make all things new. And I always tell, people that are out there thinking, I want to end it. I said, can you imagine if I'd have ended it? And when God would have said, look, you young man, here's what I had planned for you. I was going to play his son. What a sad thing that would have been. But I cried out to God and I asked, Lord, what's my purpose? What do you want me to do in this life? And he came to me in a movie theater. Presence came. Your soul knows this, but about 1,000 yards exactly landed outside. His presence landed outside the theater. Now you got to be careful when you ask God, tell me what's my purpose. I meant it. And he came into the theater and I felt this love all around me. It was everything to me. It meant everything that somebody out there loved me like that. And then the voice said, I'd like you to be an actor. At the time I was like, I don't know anything about how to do that stuff. I had no idea I had the gift. When I focus on the scripture and I think of the things that I've done, my own sin, and I shouldn't be forgiven for it, and he's willing to do that for me, then I have no choice but to do that for others. I'm not telling you that that person is hurting you. You have to keep being with that person. You can pray for that individual. Every time you pray for them, you're moving angels in over them. So you're really afflicting them. They don't like the light on them. They want the demons around them. You're not going to be who you used to be. It's like Darth Vader, remember Star Wars? You become more mechanical and you lose the childlike quality in you. You're not free anymore. You're oppressed.